You're such a slob. There's no way you're my kid. Get lost, you pig, yelled Bob, and I stepped in to protect Luke. If you won't acknowledge Luke as your own son, I'll take him in. Days later, when the two found out that Luke had been on TV, they came to our house. Luke, come home with us, they implored. To them, Luke retorted, Who are you guys? I'm Katherine Johnson. Ever since I lost my husband a few years ago, I've been living alone. Living alone in a big house was lonesome. Having no particular hobbies, every day was unbearably dull. However, there was one thing I looked forward to. That was seeing my grandson, Luke. Seeing my adorable grandson, Luke, was the only thing that brought me comfort. My son Bob and his wife Michelle ran a nightclub together. It seemed to be flourishing, and the couple always seems busy. The two had a baby after several years of marriage. Apparently, they wanted to have a girl and make her the star attraction of their club. Even before the baby's gender was known, they bought tons of baby girl products, holding high hopes for a girl. However, the baby turned out to be a boy. The disappointment of the two upon knowing that it was a boy was profound. Once the baby is born, you'd think they find it endearing regardless. That's what I optimistically thought, but it didn't go that way. Bob and Michelle showed no interest in the baby they had brought into the world, nor did they seem to care much for him. Even his name wasn't given much thought by the two. Fed up, I presented a few options, and from those, the couple chose the name Luke. The couple continued to show little interest in Luke. The two were determined to have a girl next time, but they never had another child. Michelle gradually began to harbor resentment towards Luke. All our plans got messed up because you are not a girl. It's all your fault. Michelle seemed to have such misplaced hatred towards him. Moreover, led by Michelle, Bob too began to adopt a cold attitude toward Luke. If only I had intervened at that point, maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. Eventually, Michelle stopped making meals for Luke. She'd leave a $5 bill on the table every day before heading to work, not returning until the early hours of the morning. Luke spent the long hours from evening to night alone. Just imagine how daunting it must have been for a young child to wait alone for his parents' return. With the money Michelle left, Luke had been buying his meals at the convenience store. Still a young boy, Luke didn't consider things like nutritional balance and would often buy sweets and potato chips to eat. Furthermore, there were times when he would eat convenience store meals that were about to be discarded. A child going to the convenience store alone daily is inevitably noticeable. A sympathetic convenience store worker would secretly share some food with Luke. Thanks to this, even on days when Michelle didn't leave money, Luke was never without a meal. By the time Luke was in 3rd grade, his weight had exceeded 150 pounds. This was the result of his unhealthy diet of sweetbread, convenience store meals, and sweets every day. Bob and Michelle seemed displeased with this. Ever since Luke had put on weight, the two had been verbally abusive towards him. Look at how fat you've gotten. Get a grip. You're not my child, you're just a fat burden. Get out, you're in the way. When I learned that they had said such things, it felt like my heart would burst. I wonder how Luke felt hearing such words from his father. Worried about Luke, I occasionally visited his house to check on him. From Bob and Michelle's tone, I had a hunch they were starting to resent Luke. I visited their home to confirm that they weren't doing anything terrible to Luke. One day, sadly, my fears came true. There's no way a fatso like you could be my child. Get lost, you pig. As soon as I opened the door, I heard Bob shouting. I rushed towards the noise and saw Luke lying on the floor. Judging from his hand on his cheek, Bob must have hit him. Bob, what are you doing? I rushed over to Luke, pulling him towards me to shield him from Bob. Looking at Luke, he gazed back at me with a vacant expression. His look resembled that of surrender, and I regretted making such a young boy wear such a face. Bob seemed unaware of my arrival, his eyes wide as if they were about to pop out. Do you understand what you're saying? Luke is genuinely your child, I yelled at Bob. Although Bob is my son I gave birth to, I couldn't comprehend what he is thinking at all. Even if Luke was not the daughter he had hoped for, I could not believe the treatment he was giving to his own innocent son. If you don't acknowledge Luke as your child, I'll take him in. Both Luke and Bob were taken aback by my sudden words. From there, the conversation moved rapidly. Bob and Michelle, seizing the opportunity to rid themselves of their problem, accepted my proposal eagerly. Thanks, Mom. Now I can concentrate on my business, right, Michelle? Yes, thank you so much. On the day I took Luke in, the two of them said this with the brightest smiles I had ever seen. That smile made me sad. I fully understood how little they cared about Luke. I had been observing, thinking that it would be best for Luke that he was with his real parents, but I strongly regretted not taking him in earlier. On our way back to my house, Luke said, I'm sorry, I'll grow up fast and move out. What on earth was he saying? When I asked him, Luke replied with a stoic expression. You regret taking me in on a whim, don't you? You look angry all along. I look angry? Luke nodded sadly. No, I regret not doing this sooner. I should have let go of my notion sooner that you must be happier to be with your real parents. Aren't you annoyed with me? Luke looked at me with anxious eyes. I tightly hugged Luke. No way! I know for sure that I love you more than those two. Luke seemed uncertain of how to react. He was freezing like a statue for a while, and then he mumbled softly, This is the first time I've been hugged. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I swore to myself that I'd make this kid happy no matter what. From that day on, Luke transformed into a lively and cheerful kid. He started laughing more than I could have ever imagined, and he also became more talkative. Every day when he returned home from school, he would help prepare dinner while excitedly sharing the day's events. You seem very cheerful today, Luke. Did something good happen? Do you know? Something funny happened today. While we were singing in music class, a sparrow flew into the room. The teacher was in such a frenzy. I was wondering why, and then she almost started crying, saying, I can't handle birds. Remembering the event, Luke chuckled. He looked so cute and lovable that my heart melted. Since he started eating healthy meals at my place, Luke's physique became more standard. Although he maintained his childlike charm, his contour sharpened, making him look quite handsome. He shyly told me that the girls at school started talking to him more. Luke seemed happy every day, and I was relieved to see him that way. The day of the first parent-teacher conference since I took Luke in came. Luke's homeroom teacher made a suggestion. Why don't you have him take an IQ test at the hospital? This suggestion made me anxious. I felt like they were saying there was something wrong with Luke's intelligence. Is Luke falling behind the others? As I asked this, the teacher hurriedly waved his hands. No, it's the opposite. From my experience, I believe Luke may be gifted. I was a bit puzzled by the unfamiliar term gifted. According to the teacher, gifted refers to children who possess innately higher abilities compared to their peers. The teacher handed me a piece of paper. This is a graph showing the change in Luke's grades. At a certain point, Luke's grades have shot up significantly. Sure enough, the graph showed a sudden upward trend. Looking at the dates written on the x-axis, I realized that the change happened right after I took Luke in. I was surprised at how sudden it was, so I asked Luke, have you started going to cram a school or something? This increase is unusual though, but that wasn't it. Apparently, Luke had been adjusting his results to avoid doing too well. I didn't quite understand what the teacher meant, so I turned to look at Luke, who was sitting next to me. Noticing my gaze, Luke began to speak. At my old home, if they found out I was doing well in school, they didn't like it. They'd say I was being cheeky and I'd get hit more than usual. Luke shrugged his shoulders. So, during tests, I would intentionally leave answers blank or get them wrong.
I actually knew all the answers, though.
Luke smiled smugly.
Now there's no need for that, so I just take the test normally. It's so easy it's boring. Even just reading the textbooks lets me understand everything in class, which isn't fun. I want to study something more challenging.
Luke sighed deeply. I was momentarily worried that the teacher might feel offended by his words, but my worries were eased when I heard the teacher laughing loudly. What do you think? If Luke is gifted, we might be able to provide support that suits him. Why not get tested at the hospital? If it's for Luke's benefit. With that in mind, I decided to take Luke to the hospital over the weekend. From what I can tell, based on his behavior at school and home, as well as the results of his IQ test, it seems that Luke may be gifted. The doctor spoke clearly. Luke's IQ was significantly higher than average, which surprised me. I had no idea Luke was this smart. No wonder he finds school so easy. To fulfill Luke's desire for more challenging studies, I decided to hire a private tutor for him. The tutor is a veteran who graduated from a prestigious American university, and he understands Luke's characteristics. Luke was pleased, saying it was more fun than school. He passed both the English and Chinese proficiency tests with the highest grade at the tutor's suggestion. When the tutor posted about his proud student on social media, it spread rapidly. Luke became the talk of the town, and we started getting interviews from newspapers and television stations. One day, while spending the usual time with Luke, the doorbell rang. Oh, are the reporters here already? There was still about 30 minutes left until the interview time. I opened the door expecting the reporters and was surprised. Long time no see, Mom. I've come to get Luke. There they were, Bob and Michelle. What brings you here? When I asked, Michelle flashed a bright smile and replied, Dear mother-in-law, thank you for caring for Luke until now. From now on, he will live with us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What on earth is this woman talking about? You must be joking. Luke has an interview soon. I'm very busy. Please leave. Upon hearing the word interview, Bob and Michelle's eyes lit up. So it really was Luke. We saw it on TV. Our son is truly remarkable. Their faces turned towards each other, excitement bubbling between them. And then they blurted out an outrageous idea. If Luke comes back, our shop will be secure. Beside Bob, Michelle was nodding fervently. If we get customers who come to see Luke, our sales will go up. In the long run, we could even leave the management to him. That would make life easier for us. I was astounded at the self-serving thoughts of the two. After claiming that Luke isn't their child, they show up to take him back when they realize how talented he is. A child is, Luke is, not a possession of his parents. Don't you understand? I had reached the limit of my patience. Just as I was gearing up to give them a piece of my mind, Luke appeared behind me. Seeing Luke, Bob and Michelle broke into smiles. Their smiles only stoked my irritation. However, their smiles were shattered by a single phrase from Luke. Who are you guys? Luke asked, staring at the two straight on. They looked bewildered. Who are we? We're your dad and mom. You're our beloved child who I suffered to give birth to. Michelle's words made me feel sick. How dare she call him her beloved child? Just as I was about to retort, Luke smirked and said,
My only family here is my grandmother. I don't know you people who abandoned me.
He stated this firmly. Luke, that woman is your grandmother, not your mother. Come back home with us. Bob tried to persuade him gently, but Luke glared at him.
My home is here with my grandma. Unlike you, she's always shown me love. You abandoned me, and now you want to reclaim me because you think I'm useful? You're not my parents.
It was the first time Luke had ever raised his voice like that. Bob and Michelle cringed at his outburst. Bob, visibly irritated, tried to grab Luke's arm. Just as I was about to intervene, a voice called out from behind Bob. Is what he said true? Did you abandon him? Journalists began to gather around, their faces solemn. They had come to interview Luke. It was already the time of our appointment with them. Reporters surrounded Bob and Michelle. They circled Bob and Michelle, firing off questions at them. Later, this interview was broadcast on television with the sensational title, "The Sad Past of a Genius Boy, Confronting the Parents Who Abandoned Him." The impact was immense. The couple was lambasted on social media, and their business received numerous angry calls. "How could you abandon him just because he wasn't a girl? Don't try to manipulate your child for your own convenience." On top of the angry calls, crowds of people apparently gathered to see the faces of these terrible parents. Needless to say, business could not operate normally under these conditions. In desperation, Michelle reached out to her parents for help, only to receive a cold response. "You reap what you sow. Deal with it yourself. We have no intention of helping anyone who would abandon their child." Bob and Michelle were universally scorned and abandoned. The two of them were reportedly upset, crying out, "Why is this happening to us?" Hopefully this incident will be a wake-up call for them. Although, given their current attitude, the prospects seem bleak. After that incident, Luke and I quickly moved away.
I want to cut ties with them. I can't stand going through this over and over.
I respected his decision, and we moved far away to prevent the two of them from ever approaching Luke again. We would have sought legal measures if we could, but it seems it's hard to sever ties with biological parents, even if they are adoptive. In Luke's new school, he made a good friend, who seemed to understand him well. Luke would bring him home, show him his homemade programming, and happily explain his points of interest. While I find Luke's interests a bit hard to follow, his friend seems to understand, listening attentively and nodding as Luke explains. From time to time, they would be engrossed in a discussion about programming. Seeing Luke so happy always made me feel glad we moved here. Thanks to his new friend, Luke has been able to live freely and happily every day. I hope they continue to get along well and support each other. What does it mean to cancel a policy? I started whispering during my lunch break at work after finding my voice was unintentionally loud on a phone call. I didn't make any such arrangements. I was puzzled and frustrated. My mind went blank. The insurance company representative on the other end of the line, a woman, remained calm in contrast to my distress. "According to our records, we received a request for policy cancellation from your end, and the procedure has been completed." I had been subscribed to a savings-oriented life insurance policy. My sister-in-law Rachel was an insurance agent, and with her job's demanding quotas, she had persuaded me to get an insurance policy that was more expensive than the market rate. I'm Stella. I'm a 40-year-old office worker, living in an apartment with my husband and daughter. Today has been a tough day right from the start. My husband announced he was going on an overnight business trip as soon as he woke up and started packing his bags. Our daughter, Amy, began fussing over her missing math textbook. Amy is only in first grade, so her need for help is expected. But when my husband starts fussing about his missing travel bag and new socks, it can be quite a handful. I've been contemplating divorce for a while, due to our relationship being on the rocks for the past year, and this kind of thing just adds to the irritation. Why don't you both prepare the day before? I couldn't help but say it out loud. Amy obediently apologized and promised to be more careful next time, to which I replied, "That's okay, honey. I should have helped you check it yesterday. I'm sorry." My husband, however, was different. "Amy's still young. If you had taken care of everything, she wouldn't be in this mess. And if you had bought me new socks, I wouldn't be complaining like this." I was furious at his petty complaints. "I had no idea about your business trip. There are freshly laundered socks in the drawer. Isn't that okay?" "I like to wear brand new socks when I'm on a business trip." What's with that weird fixation? I thought so, but I kept my thoughts to myself. He goes on these overnight business trips maybe once every few months. His company must have scheduled it in advance, he just didn't bother telling me. If he needed new socks, he could have bought them by himself, or at least told me ahead of time. Amy looked like she was about to cry and said, "Mom, Dad, stop arguing." So I turned to her and said, "I'm sorry, Amy, it's alright. Let's find your textbook together." My husband resumed his packing in silence, and I helped Amy with her backpack. I sneaked a glance at him and noticed he was packing more casual clothes instead of his usual business attire. Is he cheating again? Something felt off. He has cheated on me twice before. The first time was right before Amy was born. I thought about divorce then, but he begged and cried for forgiveness, even getting our in-laws involved. My mother-in-law pleaded with me to stay with her son, and my sister-in-law Rachel implored me not to abandon her brother, so I decided against the divorce. But then, last year, he cheated on me again. It was the same as before, a girl he met on a dating app. My husband is the type to blurt out whatever comes to his mind, and his actions are quite transparent. He thinks he's keeping his actions secret, but as far as I'm concerned, it's almost as if he wasn't even trying to hide anything. In an instant, he's busted, and there he is again, apologizing profusely while weeping. Even though he usually struts around with such arrogance, seeing him crying with his nose running is just pitiful. I swear, if there's another issue, we're done, I declared to my husband, made him fill out the divorce papers, transferred all of our savings into my account, and though I forgave him, any love I had has completely vanished. My husband always puts himself first. I can't forgive him for not caring for our daughter Amy, or spending time with her, but I plan to endure until Amy gets a bit older before getting a divorce. In the end, Amy's math textbook was easily found inside her backpack. Amy left for school full of joy, but I was completely drained from the morning ordeal. I didn't have time to prepare my packed lunch, so I went to a deli near my office during my lunch break. That's when a poster from an insurance company caught my eye, and I suddenly remembered that my policy was the kind where you receive a celebratory cashback after a certain period. I think it should be deposited any time now. I'm paying a hefty premium every month after all. Without such little joys, I wouldn't be able to continue. I wonder what I'll use the money for once it comes in. I could buy Amy some new fall clothes. I was starting to feel a little excited. With a spring in my step, I dropped by the bank to update my passbook and found that not only was there no celebration money, but this month's insurance premium hadn't been deducted yet. Huh? That's strange. Isn't the premium supposed to be deducted the same month I received the bonus? Initially, I was simply baffled, but recalling my husband's shady actions this morning, I had a bad feeling and decided to call the insurance company. Turns out Rachel, my sister-in-law, was off for the day. Another woman picked up and filled me in, revealing the cancellation of my policy. She said the cancellation fee had already been paid, but I didn't see any such deposit in my account. The lady on the phone kept insisting that all paperwork was in order, and that the insurance company had done everything by the book. It would be a huge issue if the policy was canceled without my consent. It felt like she was indirectly implying that the insurance company wasn't at fault. Let me make this very clear. I had absolutely no intention of canceling my policy. I'll check with Rachel and my husband, but you at the insurance company better confirm with Rachel too. I stuck it to them, then hung up. Before I knew it, lunch break was almost over. I didn't even have time to eat the lunch I'd brought from the deli, but my appetite was gone anyway, and I had other matters to attend to. I asked my boss if I could leave early, then I got down to completing the remainder of my work. I left the office a bit earlier than usual and immediately called my husband's cell phone. If he really was busy working and couldn't answer the call, that's just how it would have to be. "Stella, why are you calling me? I'm at work." After a few rings, my husband picked up the phone. Despite grumbling that he was at work, there was upbeat, merry music playing in the background. I wondered why my husband thought he wouldn't get caught. This is absurd. "I'm sorry about that. Hey, my life insurance was canceled without my consent, and there's no cash value. Do you know anything about this? I'm thinking I might have been scammed, and I'm considering going to the police. What? The police? What the hell are you thinking? It was me, okay? I had suspected it was the work of my husband and Rachel, so I exaggerated my claims. My husband was startled and immediately confessed. I was somewhat relieved, but my anger began to rise. Oh, really? It was you. Where's the cash value then? I used it to support my mom. Support? Did something happen to my mother-in-law? Did she suddenly need money? No, she just said she wanted to take a family trip to the holiday resorts every now and then. A trip? I was surprised at the unexpected words. You canceled my life insurance without my consent for something like that? You used it for travel expenses? The business trip was a lie? Yeah, I'm the beneficiary, so I don't see a problem. We're all going to stay in a luxury hotel. I'm in the lobby right now, and there's an amazing chandelier. Maybe he thought it was okay to open up because he got caught already. My husband bragged in an excited tone. What the heck? I have a complaint. I have a lot of complaints. Why did you cancel without my consent? I'm the one paying the premium for my own salary, right? You guys should be able to afford your own travel expenses. Aw, shut up. After all, if something happens to you, I'm the one who gets the money. So it's my money. You're healthy and you're not going to die anytime soon. You can just take out another policy. I can't understand my husband's arguments at all. But the conditions change as you get older and the insurance premiums get higher. Do you really not understand that? Well, I'm not the one who's paying. I had a headache at my husband's irresponsible words. Do your parents and Rachel know that you canceled my life insurance without my consent? Didn't my father-in-law say anything? Rachel is obviously an accomplice. You and Rachel forged my handwriting and stamped it, right? Well, yeah. My mom and dad were happy and said it was a good idea. After all, you're the one holding all our money, so it's all your fault. I want to take a break and have some fun once in a while. It's okay, right? We came on a family trip and everyone's happy. The family you're talking about includes your father and mother and Rachel, right? Why aren't Amy and I included? Isn't your family Amy and me? Insurance is for emergencies, and I'd be happier if I didn't have to use it. Shouldn't you consult me first if you want to support travel expenses? Because you would definitely say no. You and Amy are always together, so it's okay to be with the family for a change. And besides, Rachel said she wanted to take out a new life insurance policy for you, so I thought it was like killing two birds with one stone. That's just for you guys, huh? Unbelievable. You don't want to admit something because it's considered bad? What an excuse. Aren't you embarrassed behaving like grade schoolers? You're making me not want to talk by getting angry like this. What a pain in the ass. If you keep up this bickering, I wouldn't mind getting a divorce. I bet you couldn't pull it off. Perhaps he's become too emboldened being in a tourist spot. My husband sounds more assertive than usual. Understood. I hung up the phone. Brace yourself. I'll get back at my in-laws and my husband for all of this. I murmured to myself. My patience is at its end. My husband has been underestimating me because I've always forgiven him, even though he kept threatening to divorce. I had thought that my in-laws were normal people, and Rachel wasn't a bad person, despite her insistence on pushing for a high life insurance policy. But normal, sensible people wouldn't unilaterally cancel their daughter-in-law's life insurance and misuse the money. This is what I get for marrying into this family. I'll cut them all off. I immediately headed to the court. I always kept the divorce papers my husband had filled out in my bag like a talisman. I submitted the divorce papers right away, then picked up my daughter Amy from the after-school program. On our way home, I told Amy about the divorce. Amy was surprised, but after explaining carefully, she accepted it. When we got home, Amy asked,
So, Dad isn't coming back home anymore?
Your dad won't be back tonight because he's on a business trip. We're getting divorced, so we're going to live separately, but we still need to prepare for that. I answered carefully, not understanding Amy's question.
Then let's start packing right away. Hurry!
Huh? What's going on?
Well, you're breaking up with Dad, right? You don't have to cry anymore. I don't like him because he's always mad.
Wait, Amy, did you always try to stop us from fighting because you didn't want me to be sad?
Of course.
I had intended not to divorce for Amy's sake, but it seems she had been putting up with this situation all this time. The reason why Amy was always trying to intervene in our fights was simply because she was worried about me.
Dad never plays with me, even on his days off, and he tells me to go away whenever I talk to him. He only uses me when he wants to say something mean to you like this morning. I've always been sad because I love you, Mom.
Amy smiled slightly. Her smile pierced my heart. My husband, who is selfish and always prioritizes himself, has been seen through not only by me, but also by Amy, and it seems Amy has had enough of my husband. It was heartbreaking to learn of Amy's true feelings in this way, and I felt like crying. I see. I'm sorry, Amy. I've made you go through a lot. From now on, it's going to be just the two of us. But I'll take good care of you. I really love you.
Yay!
I vow never to let Amy be sad again. While Amy was doing her homework, I kept myself busy by reaching out to a lawyer, searching for realtors and movers online. Then I contacted my parents. When I explained the situation, they told me, "Come back home right away." Amy doesn't have to transfer schools. Moreover, if it's tomorrow morning, my father said he could borrow a truck from an acquaintance and help us move our things. I contacted the landlord and the elementary school, briefly explaining that we'd be commuting from my parents' home from now on. I decided to deal with the paperwork from the school gradually, and I called work to take a vacation day tomorrow. I want to get most things done before my husband gets home. The next day, my parents came over, and we quickly moved our stuff to my parents' home. Everything was done before my husband got home, and only his belongings were left in the apartment. I left a note saying, "We are divorced, we are now strangers," and left the apartment. When my husband came home and realized we were gone, he would undoubtedly be stunned. Serves him right. The thought of it made me feel triumphant. The reason I was able to prepare for the divorce so smoothly this time is that I had researched the necessary procedures and preparations when he cheated on me before. I had warned him then, next time there will be no discussion, we will divorce. And we had agreed that I would keep custody and all of our shared assets. In this way, my daughter and I started our new life at my parents' house. A few days later, I received a frantic call from my mother-in-law. My husband's phone was blocked, so I suppose she called me on his behalf. He is a weak man who cries easily despite his arrogance, so he might be crying pitifully.
What are you thinking? You're divorcing even though my son didn't cheat?
She yelled so loudly it made my ears ring, and I instinctively moved my phone away from me.
Hey, Stella, it's not too late. Apologize to my son right now. He's been crying because he's hurt. Aren't you embarrassed making a big fuss over something like this?
Huh? Apologize? Me? Why? I couldn't comprehend her words, and I found myself blurting out, "Who are you?"
Huh?
She probably didn't expect such a response from me. She stopped speaking abruptly. I was surprised by my own words that just slipped out.
Hey, it's me. It's me, your mother-in-law. Come on, Stella, what's gotten into you? You can't possibly be going senile. You're still young.
No, I only have one mother. If you don't identify yourself, could this be a scam call? I decided to ride on my slip of the tongue. After all, we're strangers now that we're divorced, and there's no point in having a serious conversation with people who'd unilaterally cancel a life insurance policy.
Don't be ridiculous, Stella. If you're going to take that attitude, I have a few things to say too.
As expected, my mother-in-law was furious, but I didn't care. What are you talking about? Do you think you can do something? I had an agreement with him that if there was any issue, we'd divorce immediately, and he told me on the phone that we were getting divorced, you know? My words left her speechless. I took the opportunity to press on. If he wanted to go on a trip, he should have just talked to me about it. Why did he have to commit a crime? Is your whole family looking to end up in jail or something? I think canceling life insurance without consent qualifies as forgery, you know. That could lead to imprisonment from 3 months to 5 years, so I'm ready to fight this thoroughly. I don't want to hear about how his family has no savings or they're poor. My husband might have just done this nonchalantly. But that's precisely why I can't forgive him. What? Hold on a minute. We can't have criminals in this family. Hey, sorry. Listen to me, please. Perhaps surprised by the mention of imprisonment, my mother-in-law, who had been on a roll just a moment ago, suddenly became submissive, but it was too late. I hung up and blocked all calls from my husband's family. After that, my husband was so shocked by the divorce that he voluntarily left his job and became a shut-in. As for life insurance, we used a system known as the financial ADR, which resolves insurance-related disputes outside of court and successfully settled. Rachel, my sister-in-law, was disciplined and fired from her insurance company, and it even made minor headlines. Because of this, the in-laws became the talk of the town and were shamed by relatives, being told things like, "You have no common sense," and "have some shame," and it seems like they were quite uncomfortable. Both my husband and Rachel have become unable to work, and it seems they're in quite a financial crunch. I'm living freely with my daughter Amy, back at my parents' house. I want to make up for the hardship I've put Amy through by showering her with plenty of love.
I married the man I deeply love, and finally we became a married couple that I've always dreamt of. And to top it all, we're even holding a wedding ceremony that I've always dreamt of. Being blessed by so many people and being able to marry the one I love. I was sure my parents in heaven would also be happy. That's what I thought. But I had no idea about the tragedy that was awaiting me. I will never forgive them for ruining everything. I am going to get back at them. My name is Mary. I got proposed to by Thomas, my boyfriend who's 2 years older, and got married at the age of 27. I lost my father when I was very young, and my mother passed away due to illness 2 years ago. Thomas was the one who supported me both physically and emotionally when I was at my lowest. We got married on the anniversary of our 2.5 years of dating and started a blissful newlywed life. Due to my husband's busy work schedule, we decided to have the wedding ceremony when things calmed down. On my husband's days off, we went to the wedding venue and started preparing for our wedding. We had the date of our ceremony fixed, and it was time to decide on our guests. I have an aunt and uncle who loved me like their real daughter in place of my deceased parents. After my father's death, they brought me lots of cooked meals since my mother was busy working all the time. They also kept me company when my mother was at work, so I wouldn't feel lonely. Moreover, when my mother fell sick, they shared all her chores so that I wouldn't have to carry the burden all by myself. Even when my mother's condition didn't improve and I was down, "It's okay. Your mother is definitely going to get better, so Mary, you also believe and wait for her, okay?" My aunt would encourage me gently. No matter how tough or painful things got, I was able to overcome them because I had my aunt and my uncle by my side. That's why I wanted them to sit in the seats designated for family on the bride's side. To convey this, I visited my aunt and uncle's house after a long time. "Mary, congratulations on your marriage." My aunt greeted me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Auntie." "So I was thinking, I want you guys to sit in the seats designated for families at my wedding. Is that okay?" "Of course." Then my aunt brought out a big box. "Mary, why don't you open it?" Prompted by my aunt, I opened the box in front of me. Inside was a pure white wedding dress. The dress, made of beautiful silk fabric, had a good balance of elegance and cuteness. The décolletage was decorated with vibrant lace. The silhouette was cleverly designed to form a beautiful A-line, and cute flower embroideries were done on the hem. The size was smaller than usual, and it was clear that it was made just for me. I loved the wedding dress at first sight. "Huh? Why this?" "Well, your mother, my sister, she made it." "What? Mom did?" "That wedding dress was handmade by my mother." Despite battling illness, she tirelessly stitched it together day after day, custom fit for my petite frame. She asked my aunt, "If Mary ever gets married, please give her this. This is a creation filled with all the love your mother could muster in her final days. Mary dear, you must wear this dress at your wedding. Your mother would be so pleased," said my aunt, her eyes brimming with tears and a tender smile on her face. Her heartfelt sentiment moved me to tears. "Thank you, Auntie. You've kept it safe all this time. I promise I'll wear this dress at my wedding. You have to come and see me wear it," I said, clutching my mother's handcrafted wedding dress, full of happiness as I returned home. Once home, I hung the dress on my bedroom wall and gazed at it intently. I was determined to make my wedding a success wearing this dress in honor of my mother. That feeling only got stronger as the days passed. Then one day, a disaster struck. When I returned home from work, the wedding dress that should have been hanging on my wall was gone. What? It's gone? Why? I know I left it hanging right here. Panicking, I pulled out my phone to call the cops. Just then, my husband walked in the door. "Oh, Mary, what's wrong?" Seeing me in tears, he sensed something was amiss. He rushed over to me. My dress is gone. I had it hanging right here. I think someone stole it." My desperate plea elicited an unexpected reaction from my husband. "Oh, is that all?" "Huh? What do you mean? Thomas, do you know something?" I asked hesitantly, to which my husband responded with a shocking revelation. "Of course I know. My sister said she's getting married soon and wanted to borrow your dress." "Huh?" Yes, my husband just went ahead and lent my wedding dress to his sister without even asking me. Apparently, when he casually mentioned the dress to her, she asked if she could borrow it, and he readily agreed. That's why she came over to pick it up. She used the spare key from our mailbox. He gave my dress to his sister without my permission. I can't believe this. What the hell? As I raged at my husband, he waved his hands dismissively as if it were no big deal. Our wedding is still a while away, so it's not a problem, right? Besides, my sister was thrilled. She's broke and was happy that she wouldn't have to pay for a dress. Happy that she wouldn't have to pay for a dress. I never gave permission for any of this. I was livid at my husband's blatant disregard for my feelings. That dress was handmade by my mother specifically for me. Didn't I tell you that, Thomas? It's tailored perfectly to my size. Why would you lend it out without asking me first? Calm down. It's not like it's a one-time use thing. You can still wear it, so what's the issue? What's the issue? It's obvious, isn't it? Why would your sister wear my dress before I do? No matter how you look at it, that's just wrong. Even after I explained why I was pissed, my husband refused to apologize or even acknowledge his mistake. To add insult to injury, he let out an exasperated sigh. "Mary, you're being too petty. Stop acting like a spoiled child, okay?" Spoiled? Being upset about this makes me spoiled? It's something my mother made for me, so it makes no sense for my sister-in-law to be wearing it before me. I'd reached my limits with his irresponsible comments that disregarded my feelings completely. "I'm going to your parents' house tomorrow to get the wedding dress back from your sister." "Huh? Tomorrow is the day my sister's fiancé and his parents are coming to visit our parents' house. Don't interrupt them." Interrupt? You got some nerve. Let me be clear. No matter what anyone says, I have no intention of letting your sister wear that dress. The next day, I took a day off of work to go see my sister-in-law. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, I could hear lively voices from the open front door. As I secretly stepped in and listened. "Wow, you made this dress yourself? That's amazing, Cynthia." A man's voice, whom I did not know, echoed in the house. Cynthia was my sister-in-law. Cynthia, who was praised, responded in a humble tone. "Oh, it's nothing like that." She was flaunting my mother's handcrafted wedding dress to her fiancé and his parents. It took me quite some time, but I really wanted to bring my dream dress to life and have a good wedding, so I ended up making it myself. At that moment, something inside me crumbled with a sound. Her dream dress? What a joke. That's something my mother made with love, just for me. Before I even realized I was already walking towards them, I walked straight through the entrance and seized the wedding dress from my sister-in-law. Then I shouted, "This is mine!" in front of everyone. Everyone present looked at me with surprised expressions. Whoa, Mary, what's happening all of a sudden? My father-in-law asked me in a flustered manner. Ignoring him, I stared sternly at my sister-in-law and revealed the truth to everyone. This dress is something my mother made for me. Your daughter stole it from my room without my permission. What? Everyone present was taken aback, their eyes wide with shock, except for my sister-in-law, who turned pale. Hey, Cynthia, don't tell me that's true. As she was questioned by her fiancé, my sister-in-law desperately tried to resist. No, it's not like that. This is really something I made by myself. Realizing that the talk was going nowhere, I decided to question Cynthia. Why don't you try it on then? Since my mother made it to fit my size, I don't think it will fit you. Yes, my sister-in-law is taller and more toned than I am. There's no way she could pull off this dress, which was made to fit my petite frame. Hey, what are you doing? Finally, my husband appeared. My sister-in-law must have called him. His face was beet red with anger. Mary, what the heck are you doing? Are you trying to ruin my sister's wedding? What are you talking about? If anything, I'm the one who's about to have their wedding ruined. I retorted to my husband, and yet again, he started to blurt out something outrageous. Shut up. We canceled our wedding. So give that dress to my sister. Huh? Canceled? That's right. We canceled it. My husband insisted, pressing his point. My sister said she was strapped for cash, so we gave her the $50K we saved for our wedding as a gift. Since we aren't holding the wedding anymore, we don't need that dress, right? You let someone borrow my dress without asking, then canceled our wedding and also gave away the $50K we saved up. Are you out of your mind? So to him, our marriage was just something of that little importance. I could feel myself falling out of love with my husband. As I fell silent, my husband, misunderstanding that he'd won the argument, opened his mouth again. Now you give that dress back to my sister right away. You have no objections about the cancellation, do you? Fine. Let's get a divorce then. Huh? At my immediate reply, my husband let out a dumbfounded voice. Did you hear me? I said divorce. I don't want to be with someone like you who can trample on people's feelings without a second thought. Hey, wait a minute. Why do we have to get a divorce? That's ridiculous, isn't it? My husband started panicking, flustered. Any sane person would have seen this coming. He's just insane. Well, that settles it. As I tried to leave the place, holding the dress. Hold on a minute. My sister-in-law grabbed the end of the dress with all her might. The dress tore in the process, becoming a pitiful sight. Looking at it, my sister-in-law and husband burst out laughing as if they couldn't contain themselves. Serves you right. This is what happens when you mess with my sister. Yeah, really. If you just quietly lent me the dress, none of this would have happened. You brought this upon yourself, Mary. Tears welled up in my eyes, mixed with anger. My wedding being canceled was fine, but I wanted to keep this dress safe with me for my entire life. And now, because of these worthless people, just then, my sister-in-law's fiancé stood up and slowly muttered, "Guess we're done too." Huh? Everyone was taken aback. Wait, you're joking, right? You're calling off our engagement? Why? In response to my sister-in-law's plea, her fiancé glared at her with a fierce look. Why? It's obvious, isn't it? There's no way I could marry someone who can do nasty things like this with no hesitation. No way. Even his parents seemed to feel the same way, showing quiet anger towards my sister-in-law's actions. Well, no more talk of marriage then. My fiancé and his parents were about to leave. Just then, my sister-in-law burst in frantically, yelling, "Wait a minute. It's absurd to call off the engagement over something like this. Right, Mom and Dad? You guys think so too, don't you?" Despite her pleas to her parents, it was too late. Wait, Dad? Mom, why are you glaring at me? Her father then shouted at her with full force, "Get out, you disgrace." Even my usual strong-willed sister-in-law started sobbing due to this overwhelming force. "You guys are so cruel. This is too much." "Stop crying. I don't remember raising a jackass like you. I'm not claiming you, someone who can be this dismissive of others' feelings, as our daughter. But, upon seeing his sister crumbling in tears, my husband stepped in to intervene. "Dad, Mom, calm down. You don't have to blame my sister this much. You too, Thomas." "What? You're no better. How dare you disregard Mary's feelings? Leave this house with Cynthia, you foolish son." Probably never anticipating that he too would be disowned, my husband stood there, mouth agape. Then my mother-in-law came over to me, bowing her head in apology. "I'm so sorry, Mary. We were told that the dress was handmade by our daughter, and we just believed it. No, it's okay, but I can't continue living with Thomas anymore. That's okay, it's our daughter's fault. You go ahead and live your life without worrying about it." Her words really hit home. My in-laws had always been very kind to me, so I felt a pang of guilt that things have come down to this. But I couldn't stay with Thomas anymore. "Mary, I'm sorry, I really am. We'll have a proper wedding, just don't file for divorce yet." My husband quickly changed his tune the moment he was disowned by his parents. There was absolutely no chance of me getting back together with such a spineless man. "I will live my own life. I can live a happy life without you." Hearing this, my husband collapsed to his knees. After expressing my gratitude to my in-laws, I left their house. I packed my bags and headed to my aunt's house, where she was greatly surprised. However, in the end, she respected my feelings and welcomed me. As for that torn dress, my aunt mended the torn parts, and my mother's dress regained its shine. Afterward, I asked for alimony from my ex-husband, and we divorced. He had been secretly handing the wedding funds to my sister-in-law, so I was able to get a little more alimony. It seems that my husband and sister-in-law have been disowned by their parents, and now they are living together in the house we once shared. My sister-in-law, who had intended to become a housewife after marriage, had already quit her job and was now unemployed. Now my husband was single-handedly covering both of their living expenses. Next time, if I ever get another opportunity to marry someone, I want to make sure to thoroughly assess my partner, and then I will have a wonderful wedding. Of course, wearing my mother's handmade wedding dress.
My name is Grace. I'm 32 years old. I divorced my ex-husband due to his infidelity 3 years ago, but I recently just got remarried. Thanks to my current husband, I'm living happily every day. However, because these days are so blissful, sometimes I can't help but recall the painful memories from the past. My ex-husband was emotionally abusive and treated me like a housemaid. Despite being tired from my own job, he dumped all the housework on me. If there was even a piece of trash on the floor, he'd yell at me. He wouldn't be satisfied unless there were at least 5 dishes for dinner. And if I were to ever serve him any less, he'd leave his food untouched. I'll never forget the time he got mad at me for serving him prepped meals. And then he'd munch on potato chips. Of course, cleaning up the crumbs he dropped on the floor was also my job. Even when I protested, "What's the point of a wife who doesn't do housework?" he'd just sneer. He kept on uttering words that belittled me, gradually eroding my self-esteem. Before we got married, he wasn't like this at all. Around the time I was fed up with this life, my ex-husband demanded a divorce. He had a mistress. He was cheating on me. He wouldn't tell me who the other person was, and I didn't care. That's how exhausted I was. Fine, but in exchange, I'll take alimony. By getting him to pay the amount of alimony I proposed, I closed the curtains on my short 2-year marriage. I wonder how Nancy is doing. As I was packing up to move, I paused and mused out loud. Nancy is my best friend since high school. After the divorce, she listened to me and encouraged me a lot. Once I move, I think I'll invite Nancy for some coffee. I haven't even had the chance to tell her about my remarriage because I was so busy with preparations and paperwork. With the move coinciding with the registration of my new marriage, only my close family knows about my remarriage. I owe a lot to Nancy, so I have to properly inform her. I should think about these pleasant things, not the painful ones. Changing my mood, I started humming a tune and resumed packing. 2 months after moving, I was enjoying my afternoon tea while browsing a magazine. Now that I've settled into my new job and gotten used to the area, I've started thinking seriously about meeting up with Nancy. Just looking for recommended restaurants and cafes is fun. First, I need to get in touch and check our schedules. It's been quite some time since we last met, and I was secretly feeling nervous. Just as I was about to grab my phone to send Nancy a text, the doorbell rang. Since I had just moved in and didn't know anyone, I figured it must be someone soliciting something. But when I checked the door, there was a police officer. I tilted my head, wondering if there was some sort of incident, and opened the front door. There have been multiple reports that you've been stalking a certain man. Do you have any idea about this? Caught off guard by the unexpected visitor, I was at a loss for words. Apparently, almost every day, the man received letters crammed with the words, "I love you," among other annoyances hinting at a romantic pursuit. I had just moved into this neighborhood and suggested it could be a case of mistaken identity, but it seems I have no choice but to verify it, as the complainant has specifically named me as the perpetrator. I tried asking who the complainant was, but the officer could only apologize and bow his head. "I'm sorry, we've received several complaints, and I just came to confirm, so I can't disclose the complainant's name yet," he said. I was perplexed, but I understood that this was the officer's job. I had to reassure myself. Anyway, I've done nothing wrong, so I need to stand my ground. Finally that day, they seemed to understand that I had just moved here and said, "We will come again to report if we find out anything," before the officers left. After that, I dove into my bed in the bedroom. I fluttered my legs and pressed my face into the pillow, groaning. The fact that someone had named me was creepy, and an indescribable discomfort enveloped me. As I was wondering why and how this could have happened, I noticed the sun had already begun to set. I had planned to call Nancy, but I was in no mood anymore. I let out a heavy sigh and forced myself to get up to take in the laundry. I was deep in thought about what had happened the day before. After the police left, I discussed it with my husband when he came home, and he cheered me up, saying it must be some sort of misunderstanding. Thanks to him, I was able to regain some energy, but when my husband went to work and I was left alone, my melancholy mood came back. Just then, my phone rang, and an unfamiliar number was displayed on the screen. I could have ignored it, but I had a bad feeling, so I answered the call. "Grace, it's been a while," a familiar voice said, and I held my breath. It was my ex-husband, Ray. Ray seemed to laugh at my silence. "I heard you still haven't admitted to stalking me. I'm disgusted by the police, even though I told them to investigate thoroughly," he said. At that moment, I realized that the incident the day before was caused by my ex-husband. "So you are the one who made that strange complaint to the police?" I asked, to which my husband affirmed, "Yes. You moved close to me because you still have feelings for me, right? Everyone around me is surprised by this too," he continued, misunderstanding the situation. My ex-husband, Ray, always overflowing with an odd sense of confidence, irritates me more than he knows. I can just tell he's smirking on the other end of the phone. It seemed like he had told everyone around him that his ex-wife was stalking him. Me stalking my ex-husband? That's ridiculous. The painful memories from the past came flooding back, and even though I tried to maintain my composure, I could feel my blood boiling. "It's been 3 years now. What are you talking about? Besides, I'm remarried." I responded strongly, but my ex-husband just laughed as if he didn't believe me. "If the police can't settle this, then we have to do it ourselves," he said, suggesting a face-to-face meeting. The place he chose was a diner. "Fine, I have nothing to hide," I finally agreed. Angry as I was, I responded to the call and headed to the local diner. In retrospect, I admit that it was rather thoughtless of me. Upon arriving at the diner, I found my ex-husband Ray waiting at the entrance. He was different from the old days. Dressed in a suit even I could tell was of good quality. "Grace, have you gotten prettier somehow?" His scent, a fragrance of cologne, wafted from him as he studied me intently. "Don't even," I retorted, frowning, to which Ray simply shrugged his shoulders. "Same old Grace, still lacking in charm," he remarked. I swallowed a retort and trailed behind Ray. When we arrived at the table he had already reserved, I was shocked at the unexpected person seated there. "Nancy? What are you doing here?" Yes, it was my best friend Nancy, who was seated there. Ray and Nancy exchanged glances and shared a smirk. "Nancy and I got remarried. Don't be jealous just because I'm happy," Ray said, putting his arm around Nancy's shoulder. His arm was adorned with an expensive, gleaming watch that seemed out of place. "Oh, this? I'm a CEO now, you see. Thanks to Nancy, of course." Ray had apparently established a company with the help of Nancy's parents after our divorce. It seemed the business was doing well and had become stable. Honestly, I didn't care about that. What stunned me was the word remarriage. Nancy, who knew how badly I was treated, remarried this man? Seeing my confusion, Nancy cheerfully said, "When you invited me to your wedding, I was so surprised. Such a wonderful man like Ray with you? I never really liked you from the beginning, you see. You were always the center of everyone's attention. So I decided to pretend to be your best friend and take you down one day." With these words, Nancy smiled without remorse. "Every time I met Ray, we joked that we met in the wrong order," she said, cuddling up to Ray happily. Looking at Nancy's happy face made me feel nauseous. She had been there to comfort me after my divorce and listen quietly to all my grievances. But now, I realized that she must have been listening with a vile expression like she had now. With a triumphant look on her face, Nancy started talking to me. She told me about how she fell in love with Ray, my ex-husband, at our wedding. She confessed that she sneakily gave him her contact details on the day of the ceremony and started pursuing him. Ray, she said, quickly became infatuated with her. The most shocking revelation was that Nancy had been encouraging Ray to emotionally abuse me. No wonder I felt Ray's personality had suddenly changed after we got married. The two of them had been enjoying my suffering, and I had been oblivious. "You wouldn't give up, so in the end, we made Ray pay some money and demand a divorce," Nancy said, sipping her orange juice with a look of exhaustion. The alimony that Ray paid me was apparently funded by Nancy, something I learned for the first time. Now, to the point. Could you please stop stalking Ray? We were surprised when we saw you the other day, but to think you moved here just to stalk Ray? It's been 3 years since the divorce, and it's really creepy. We're happily married and enjoying our life, unlike you, Grace. So just give up, will you? From the way Nancy was talking, it seemed she had seen me around and realized that I had moved here. Moreover, she was convinced that I had moved here to stalk Ray. Well, let her believe what she wants. That was the least of my worries right now. I'm standing in front of this man and woman, holding myself back from letting my anger get the best of me. I state clearly, I am not stalking anyone, and I am certainly not interested in a man like you. With that, I rise from my seat. I can hear Nancy's laughter behind me, but I don't bother to look back. Almost 2 months have passed since then. I received a call from Ray. I had been expecting it, so I answer. Ray is in a panic on the other end of the line, and I can't help but smirk, because I already knew what went down. So, it seems you really were the victim of a stalker. But it turns out it wasn't me, but your current mistress, I inform him. Apparently, Ray had remarried Nancy and was having an affair again. As a result, his fling had developed strong feelings for him and turned into a stalker. That's the truth. Ray, looking shocked by my words, stammers out an explanation. Turns out he knew that the stalker was his mistress, but if Nancy found out and they divorced, he'd lose the support of her parents. He overheard Nancy saying that I had moved into the area and decided to frame me as the stalker to deceive her. According to him, it was Nancy's idea to name me as the stalker to the police and to call me to the diner. Lies built on lies, leading to this situation. It's so typical of Ray. I'm sorry I framed you as the stalker, but you didn't have to do this! I hear the agony in his voice. It sounds like he's in the middle of a real mess. From the other end of the phone, I can hear pounding on a door and the voice of a woman who seems to be Nancy. He must be barricading himself in his room. It's pathetic. I simply told Nancy the truth, out of regard for our old friendship, I explain. Ray's "this" probably refers to the photo I sent Nancy. Please expect a claim for damages for the affair. I wrote a note attached to it. The photo shows Ray's mistress engaging in stalking, and another scene of Ray walking arm in arm with the stalker into a hotel. I'm shocked that you'd go to a hotel while you're still being harassed, I say, sounding flabbergasted. I had no choice! She threatened to tell Nancy to divorce me if I didn't meet her. As for how I got such a photo, is all thanks to my husband. My current husband runs a private detective agency. He recently set up his own office, and we moved to this area. However, I am feeling mixed emotions and guilty that the first job after opening his office involves my ex-husband. My husband managed to find the real stalker of Ray in about a month, and secured solid evidence of Ray's affair with the stalker. I can't thank him enough. By the way, expect a claim for damages from both you and Nancy, I tell him. I hear Ray make a bewildered noise. You knew who the real culprit was, yet you named me to the police as the stalker? And on top of that, you spread rumors about it. Just how low can you go? But I caught my ex-husband Ray at a loss for words, and I pressed on. I was just about to forget our married life. I'm gonna make you pay for reopening my wounds. Right after I heard Ray's pitiful whimper, there came a loud noise and a woman's angry shout from the other end of the line. It seemed like Nancy had broken down the door and entered the room. I heard her ask, "Who were you sneaking around talking to?" And then the voice on the phone switched to Nancy. She must have grabbed the phone from Ray. "Who are you? That stalker chick?" "No, it's Grace." Nancy didn't calm down, even when she found out it was me on the phone with Ray. She continued to rant out. She was apparently angry about being asked to pay compensation for the affair. "Don't kid yourself! Why on earth should I have to pay for compensation now?" I told her what I'd learned from the lawyer who was introduced to me by my husband, that if you divorce due to an affair and don't know who the other person was, you can demand compensation up until 3 years after you find out. I just informed your husband that I'll be seeking damages for defamation. Nancy's voice cracked with tears. "You money grubber! Don't take away my happiness! You're just getting back what you dished out, right?" All because she disliked me, she had Ray do her dirty work and torment me. She played the good friend after the divorce, but inside, she was laughing at me. I can't forgive her. "I'm not paying any compensation fee." When I was called out to a diner, I had a voice recorder in my bag. I had it turned on for self-defense, but I unexpectedly found out that Nancy was the one Ray had the affair with 3 years ago when we got divorced. I have it recorded, and I'm recording this call as well. It doesn't matter what you say, you'll pay for your actions. If necessary, I intend to use this recording as evidence and make Nancy and Ray pay. There's a business card from a lawyer in the photos I sent you, right? From now on, please contact me through that lawyer. I hang up the phone without listening to Nancy's rebuttal. With the sound of the call ending, I finally felt like I was able to put the divorce 3 years ago behind me. Thanks to the lawyer my husband introduced, I was able to get Ray and Nancy to pay most of the compensation amount I demanded. After Nancy's parents found out about the compensation, they disowned her, and the stalkers stormed Ray's workplace and revealed their affair. Ray lost his social credibility and the support from Nancy's parents. Even now, it seems Ray and Nancy are having a hard time with the stalker from the affair. "We just moved, and you had so much going on," my husband sympathized. Despite the trouble I caused him this time, I want to cherish this man who is still kind and smiles at me. I look forward to enjoying the peaceful times that have finally arrived together.